Oh, coming up tonight, do Ferrari have even more powerful available? Yeah. Is Sebastian Vettel going to be back? Red Bull, what happened? Who is copying who? Mercedes will take what they got from last weekend's Grand Prix. DTM boss and Formula One racer Gerhard Berger doesn't think much of Aston Martin. McLaren have a mountain to climb, and what a debut from Wang Yu Zhou, or Zhou Wang Yu. We'll try and get that sorted out in a short while. Welcome. This is the F1 Pitbox.
They exist in a world beyond ours. This is Formula One.
It is a very good evening and welcome to the F1 Pitbox on this Thursday evening. As always, joined by my very good friend Gary Famato. Gary, I think everyone needs to calm down. It's as though the first race has determined the championship.
Listen, there's a long way to go. I mean, it's anything can happen in this championship. So this was an indication as to who's quick and who's not, and what work needs to be done, and what people need to do to catch up, and so forth. But a couple of nice surprises throughout the weekend as well, with some results. But by no means is this championship. This hasn't set anything in stone. I mean, this is still wide open.
Well, I mean, listen, we've either got 21 races or 22. Russia, we know, is cancelled, but it looks like Qatar is going to be announced as the race that'll take that. So it'll be 23 calendars. Let's stay on that, because Stefano Domenicali yesterday came out to the interview he had with Martin Brundle, and he said something quite extraordinary, that they could even look, after the current Concord agreement ends at 2025, at 30 races a year. And I don't know how that's going to be possible.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Look, I mean, NASCAR do it in America, but I mean, that's obviously a national series, although it is in America, which is huge. But I think they're doing 35 or 36 races a year. So I mean, the guys race. They've done it like that for a very, very long time. Different teams being in different parts of the states, running the championship. So as you quite rightly said, Formula's only got one team, but I mean, you're flying everywhere, and
Yes.
with the way logistics today and the way they can pack and get everything done, I think it's certainly possible. And while the sport's growing like it is, I think for Liberty anyway, it's a situation to make hay while the sun shines.
Well, I mean, I agree with that, but in America, as big as America is, you're going from one like state to the next.
Not a world championship.
Yeah, you're flying from Australia to Canada.
Yeah.
Anyway, the good thing about it is Domenicali did come out and sit there and again mentioned Africa. Again mentioned that we've got to get here, and just looking, Kyalami looks like that would be the best. The circuit is there. There are minor changes. There's some tarring that has to be done for some of the runoff areas. Some barricades have to be done. So it's not as though you've got to go and spend 400-500 million rand. It's a couple of million rand. So I mean, we've got to hope that Africa does get onto our calendar sooner than later.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I did see that as well, and and I think it would be great to obviously have a Formula One. That's sort of obvious, but I think for me, the most important thing about Formula One and having a Grand Prix here, you've got to have it while Lewis Hamilton is still in Formula One.
Exactly.
And I think such an opportunity missed for Formula One, for everybody, the fact that we actually haven't had a Grand Prix, or just the continent hasn't had a Grand Prix.
29 years, Gary.
It's long, and you've got the greatest of all time. It would just make sense, that it happened. I mean, he's from Grenada originally. So it's just crazy that we're not having an African Grand Prix
with Lewis Hamilton. Yeah. So the reason I'm looking over here is just to say hello to everybody. Thanks, great to have you along. Keep your comments coming through. You have any questions, throw them through to us as well, and we'll try and answer them during the course of the show. First race of the season, Gary, Charles Leclerc wins in Bahrain. A couple of years ago, you remember, he just about won it. Things didn't go that well. But what a victory for this young man. And he was flawless, Gary.
Yeah.
No mistakes. He really drove like a very experienced driver. And don't forget, as much as everyone talks about Charles Leclerc, against Carlos Sainz, which both you and I think are such a brilliant pairing, he's like about 60 or 70 races less than a guy like Carlos Sainz, so it was a stunning drive by this young guy.
It was a great drive, and for me, when Max made that attack and passed, he repassed, but you got the sense that he really had things under control, even in that wheel-to-wheel race. Max was the one who's really pushing it to really, use everything he had down the straight, in the toe, brake at the absolute latest point. He was on the edge. Whereas Charles, you sort of felt that he definitely had things, as I said, in check. Didn't look like he panicked and just basically repassed him.
And also just very clever, because he knew he was going to get passed down the straight. So what he did is he braked a little bit earlier, made sure that Max passed him so that he could get the toe for the next DRS and passed him back. It really was fantastic driving. We'll talk about a little bit more about Charles Leclerc and, of course, Carlos Sainz when we go through the winners and the losers in a short while. A couple of big incidents and a big concern, you've got to say, for AlphaTauri. They had issues in the free practice sessions. They had one of their cars get on fire. And then, of course, Pierre Gasly, his car going on fire, which is not common. We saw the massive blaze with Romain Grosjean, but that was because of impact. Yeah. It's not often, Gary, that we see these kind of cars on fire. A Honda engine, 3 Honda engines having issues over the weekend. Reliability, we mentioned it last week. These guys are pushing the limits so that they can make sure that their cars are very, very strong.
Yeah, well, we spoke about it, and we mentioned cooling.
Yes,
because of the fact that the rule changes have been, it's all been basically about aero at the end of the day. Well, that is the most significant change, and the guys that package the cars very, very well, you would say, but I think also putting a lot of pressure in terms of getting the cooling to where it maybe needs to be. McLaren got issues with the brakes, for example. We're seeing what we saw at Red Bull, whether the pump packed up, whether they ran out of fuel, whether they vaporized the fuel, which is kind of what we led to believe. If vaporizing is a cooling issue, if it was cool, it wouldn't possibly do that, in my opinion. But so I think still some time needed for teams to iron everything out. But some of them have got it pretty right. Ferrari being one of them. Out the box, I mean, they've been good. Haas, you've got to say, another one that's for them has just been unbelievable. But it's been great. It was I think it lived up to expectation. Maybe it wasn't the greatest Grand Prix we'd seen, but I think it was great to see the cars out there and just see where Formula One had gone to in this new era.
And also, amazingly, biggest TV audience on ESPN in the United States ever.
Well,
so it just shows you Drive to Survive working. People are beginning to cotton onto it. The one thing that is concerning for AlphaTauri, and let me just let you, is a longer term concern, is that the team admits that Gasly has to discard one of the 2 Honda energy stores he's allocated for the season after just one race weekend, which would almost certainly guarantee grid penalties, as you won't be able to do the remaining races without a further change. This is a major issue. Now, if you're AlphaTauri, when do you take these penalties? Do you go now to Saudi and sit there and say, listen, let's take it? Or do you sit there and say, let's wait for one of those races where it's not really going to count too much?
I think you're going to have to wait for one of the races where it's not going to count. I think Saudi, being the kind of track that it is, we saw it last year at high speed, in between the walls, it's already risk. And I think you've got to try and mitigate some of that. And I think go to a track where the overtaking is going to be a little easier.
A little bit easier. Now, amazing last week, and we also even heard the commentators over the weekend saying, just so amazing, 10 cars, 10 different designs, and yet people are saying others are copying. Otmar Zafnar, who moved from Racing Point, Aston Martin, and I mean, it's just like pot, kettle, black, all of those kind of things. He's now with Alpine. Came out and said, I've seen solutions on a couple of cars, Gary, that you'd think, how the hell did two independent teams come up with that? I don't know how to solve it, but an even playing field is important. It's also come out from Andreas Seidel, from McLaren, sitting and saying, well, there seems to be, some elements that look
sharing
along the way. And I think what they are implying is Ferrari, Haas, not so much Alfa Romeo, but specifically with Haas. But we also have to understand, with budget caps, Ferrari had to, just like most of the big teams, had to offload a lot of their personnel, engineers, technical people, and basically sat there and said, go to Haas.
Yeah, so I mean,
come on.
These guys walk in with
a wealth of knowledge.
Exactly, and a year longer than you actually think, because as you mentioned to me just now, I mean, and this is the case. The cars were delayed by a year because of COVID. So these guys have been working on these cars for ages and ages. So, if they've been transferring in that period, they're going to have taken whatever information with them, or certainly applied some of the learnings that they had at the other team. Look, even when the Force India at that point in time, I can't remember what it was called.
Racing Point, Force India. I mean, that was a
copy of the Merc, but to be honest, I kind of supported it, because at the end of the day, put another car in a competitive position without them having to spend a crazy amount of money to do it. And the racing was good, and it was good for the team. That's what led to the Aston Martin deal and whatever. So if you look at it, it's only been positive. So a team like Haas, I know you're going to make a big deal out of the fact that maybe they copied something. Well, you know what? One of a team that you need, if you're any other team on the grid, to be there, because you don't want teams falling out. It's just bad for business. Is shaping, and it's good. It's good for Formula One. But anyway, we saw it with Mercedes, and as we said, and the pink car. And they got away with it then, so I don't think anything going to happen now.
Yeah, exactly. Also, just another thing, one of the cars after the race finished, within the top 10, the FIA can sit there and decide we want to just go and inspect the car. One of the cars that was inspected was Carlos Sainz's Ferrari. They tested everything, rear suspension, you name it or whatever, everything complied.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good thing. I'm just checking on the Twitter feed, because Sebastian Vettel still has not posted a negative test. So and I mean, it's Thursday night.
Yeah.
So more than likely looking that Nico Hulkenberg will stand in. There are still a few hours. He's in Switzerland to Saudi Arabia. It's not a long way to go, but just more hassles. But we'll talk about that. Oh, actually, let's talk about Aston Martin right now. Gerhard Berger, always been outspoken, boss of DTM, was a great racing driver in Formula One, character of note, was asked his thoughts on Mike Crack and Aston Martin. And I must tell you, Gary, he was not complimentary at all. And he did go on to, in a way, sort of defend his position and try not to come across as harsh. But he said, listen, I've seen this guy work in DTM. And he said on one day, and don't forget, this was basically Sheldon van der Linde's team boss at BMW. Yeah. And he said on one day, that car would be right in the front, and then the next day, it would be right at the back. And he's come out and said, I don't think he's really the right guy. It's really early days, but a guy like Berger would know a lot more than what I would know.
You've got to listen to what he's saying. I think it's you just have to. I mean, as you said, he's worked with these people. He's been around racing his entire life. He knows what the deal is. It is early days, but I think we mentioned it on Sunday that to find the right people in any business is key. Nothing different about Formula One. And I just think that the big issue for Lance Stroll and Aston Martin is getting the right people, and that's the one area where I think he certainly tried, and they've got Whitmarsh and they're doing a couple of things. But for me, at the end of the day, Whitmarsh was the one that also caused a lot of McLaren's demise. So I don't really, know if he's got the right people there.
I think, also last week we also spoke about it and going too many cooks Maybe that's why Znafauer decided to leave. Whitmarsh, we know, is a great organizer, but as a team leader, I agree with you with McLaren. Listen, they've got more problems than we got problems.
Yeah,
they're going to have to sort it out. Before we get into the winners and the losers, let's just have a look at Red Bull Racing. It was looking like, maybe a double podium, or at least one of their cars on the podium. Ferrari, basically really had it. And then Gary, with just a few laps to go, everything went wrong for them. The more bizarre one to me was Sergio Perez, last lap, going into turn one. And Gary, the car just sort of like spun and stopped. I mean, what would cause that?
For me, it's just the engine died. You overrunning on the gearbox into the corner, and all of a sudden there's just no power. It just changes the complete balance of the car, and you're going to spin the car. When it's happening mid corner like it did there. I think that's what really happened there. It just got no fuel for whatever reason, and the engine died. There
we go. I like that, no fuel. The other one with Max, he was complaining at one stage about steering. You sit there and think that could be hydraulic.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, no power, and eventually came down to a slow. Helmut Marko has come out, and these are his words. To put it simply, a vacuum in the fuel supply system caused the engine to run out of fuel. I think we can solve the problem in Saudi Arabia over the weekend. 2 points we've got to make here. The fuel systems in all the Formula One cars are standardized parts, and they all get made by Marelli. Okay, so if there was an issue with that fuel system, surely it would have affected other cars. A vacuum in the fuel system caused the engine to run out of fuel. In my opinion, both those cars ran out of fuel.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that. Why they ran out, was it actually run out of fuel, or the other story I've heard is that the fuel vaporized, so they run the car obviously very low, which for me, the one thing just tells you, even at that level of the sport, if it's the case, I mean, you don't really know, so, but if they did run out of fuel, you sort of wonder why they didn't run the cars light or low fuel in testing to see, or the heat just got to the car. And again, it comes back to the cooling that we spoke about. Maybe it's not getting the sufficient cooling, because if it's the same unit that everybody else uses, what is different is the way that you cool it, and that could have been causing them a problem. But, I mean, we'll probably never know the exact cause of what happened there, but nonetheless, I think just a tough break for the team, to lose the podium gap for both cars is just not good for them. And then, of course, we had all these things and karma and all this stuff all over the place, and
the one thing that also gets to me, where you see people, they get so happy when somebody else fails or does badly. I just sit there and say, a little bit of respect. Sit there and go, and if it happens to your team, I mean, we'll talk about McLaren in a short while, and McLaren got a huge fan base after Drive to Survive the last couple of years, and now they're all going, oh my word, it's the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. These things happen.
It's racing.
The other point you've got to look at Red Bull running out of fuel is weight.
Yeah.
Don't forget, 695 was the cutoff weight. All of a sudden they went up to put it up to 700 or 698 or something. They still reckon Red Bull is heavier than that. Also Mercedes heavier than that. That can also be a factor of running out of fuel at the end of the race.
Pushed it to them. But I don't believe, I mean, listen, these guys are experienced. They know these engines, and yes, maybe started, but they've done a lot of work there. I don't think they can get the fuel that wrong.
Marginal.
Yes, it's. I know it's tight, and they've got a limit in terms of what they can use, etc., but they know what they're doing. The calculations are good enough to not put them in, especially Max. I mean, for so soon, there had to be some sort of technical issue attached to that retirement.
100%. Nice to hear from you, Nico. He says, excited for the season. Can't believe it's almost 20 years since we went to Monza together with MasterCard. Man, that's amazing. Gee, it was 20 years ago.
Those were the days.
Those were the days when we used to be able to go on all of these trips as well. Okay, that's looking at some of the incidents that happened over the weekend at the first Grand Prix in Bahrain. Let's have a look at the winners and the losers. Well, got to start off, Gary. The winners, without a doubt, Ferrari.
Yeah.
What a pre-season they've had, Gary. They haven't talked it up too much, but they were consistent in Barcelona. They were consistent in Bahrain. And if you look at the past, we'd seen that in the past, and then all of a sudden things go off. But no big changes. that came to the first Grand Prix, unlike Mercedes, unlike Red Bull, unlike most of the other teams. And Bonotto just said, we're trying to optimize and get it right. It was a superb performance all round from drivers. Their pit stops were incredible. It seems like a different team.
Yeah, and I think that approach just it really worked. In this, the decision or why they made the decision, who knows, but it was the right one at the end of the day. If you look at now the struggles that Mercedes-Benz are having, even Red Bull now with their issue, they took their package and worked with that. And we didn't know there was going to be such challenges. I mean, porpoising, all these things, we never really seen it before, but they presented themselves. And I think that's also what worked in Ferrari's favour. They've just stuck to their guns and just chipped away at it and just got it to a good place where it's decent.
It is. Now, there has been some interesting articles that have come out of Germany, from Amos, and then also out of the Corriere dello Sport in Italy, which is also very well respected, saying, Gary, that Ferrari didn't even have the engine turned up because they're going to slowly increase the power of the engine because of reliability. I mean, you don't want to go there and have two laps to go and you blow an engine. I mean, if that is true, you've got to believe Mercedes and Red Bull would be a little bit concerned.
I think they're definitely worried about it because, you've got to, it's like we always say, there's one thing to catch somebody in racing, another thing to overtake them. So they've got to get to Ferrari's level. Look, Red Bull are nearly there. I think it's in Max's hands. They sort of a few little things out there. They're going to be quick. Mercedes-Benz got a lot more work to do, but, Mercedes-Benz are not only trying to beat Red Bull now. Yes, it was a lucky weekend in the sense that, Red Bull packed up and Lewis came third, but realistically, the fifth place was where he was going to finish up for the weekend. So, who would have thought about it? Mclaren, a Mercedes-Benz with Lewis Hamilton finishing fifth, in the opening Grand Prix. It's not. We would never have thought that, a couple of months back.
No, that's for sure.
But this is what we have, and it's just Ferrari unassuming and just quietly getting on with the job.
Yeah, fantastic. Well done to Ferrari and the whole organization. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. Sainz says he didn't get the measure of the car the whole weekend, but was still sort of on the pace of Charles. And I mean, these two are really, really going to battle it out. I mean, it's really fantastic. Another winner, you've got to say, Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah.
They might have lucked in a little bit with the two Red Bulls not having there, but you have to be in it at the end, Gary. And you know what it's like. I don't think Hamilton did expect to be on the podium, but he'll take it.
No, absolutely, he'll take it. And I think from the team's point of view, and I'll speak of Hamilton here as well, once again, just proved that, when it comes to the business end of anything, Hamilton fires. I mean, Russell was quickest in every session in the build-up. So, qualifying came, Hamilton sorted it out. And you know why he's a seven-time world championship. And then in the race as well, just kept it up there and, was able to just be in a position where if something happened, he was going to be able to take advantage. But he kept himself as high as he could possibly have been. He didn't go backwards in any way. I think, it just wasn't a race you look back and say, wow, that was a great race by Hamilton. But I think, it really was a great race by Hamilton.
Exactly. And get the points, 22 races to go. What is your feeling about George Russell's performance in the race? Let's take qualifying out of it, because he all of a sudden, when that pressure really came, he did falter. But in the race, I think he was pretty good.
No, he was there. But, at the end of the day, Sasha, for me, it's like, you can be 1,000th of a second slower than your teammate at the end of the day. And, over a Grand Prix distance, that's a decent amount of time. I think there's a lot of expectation, a lot of people assuming that he was going to walk in there and beat Hamilton, after his performance in Bahrain when he drove with Bottas. But at the end of the day, you're racing Lewis Hamilton. It's not going to be easy. So I think he's just quieting down a bit. And just go and do your thing and understand where you are in the situation there. Look, Hamilton's not going to be there forever. I think it's an opportunity now for him just to go and learn and take what he can from actually being and appreciate being in team with Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, there we go. I think he's got to maintain that humility because you are with the 7 times world champion and perhaps the greatest of all time. A team that I don't think anybody would begrudge them having a great weekend. And what a weekend it was. Kevin Magnussen more specifically, but Haas, don't forget, they've spent 2 years working on this car. I was very disappointed when they were in free practice 1 and free practice 2, and I just went, this cannot be happening. And all of a sudden they sat and said, don't worry, we're coming. Brilliant qualifying from Kevin Magnussen, who just came in. There's Günther Steiner. they were just so elated. A fifth position. The two Red Bulls got out, but it doesn't matter. You take the points. More points, Gary, in this race than they scored in 2 years. And don't forget, this used to be a midfield team. We must never, ever forget that. This wasn't a team that sat at the back. With Grosjean and Magnussen, these guys were fighting up there all the time.
And you put Magnussen back in, they're fighting up there again. So, I don't know. You try and work that one out. It's not that complicated, actually. And I just think what you look at those pictures that we're seeing that came from the team, that you listen to the radio communication. I mean, there's a bit of electricity and a bit of excitement back in the team, which is great.
And also, I mean, I mentioned it last week as well. With Mazepin out of the equation, and that was the one thing that really disturbed me about Drive to Survive, was watching just how sterile, how uncomfortable, how weird the setup was within the Haas team. There's a different kind of step. Mick Schumacher getting 11th, unfortunately lucked out not to get the points. Got spun around by Ocon,
you did,
but fought back brilliantly. And after the safety car, didn't have any soft tires left, and he was on 14 lap old tires, and the guys are on 5. So unfortunately, got trumped. This is the benchmark. He has to be up there with K-Mag from now on.
I think he walks away from this weekend realizing, okay, I've arrived now. I'm in Formula One.
Yes.
Because now it's difficult. And this is now, you've got to beat the best in the world. And I think, as we said last week, the best thing that could have ever happened to him was to get a teammate that can actually do something. Because, at the end of the day, I don't think it was going to go anywhere.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Previous to, with Mazepin, unfortunately for him. But yeah, great. I think we'll see Mick improve. I think, we're only judging on what we've seen his performance has been in his past been. He seems to be able to find stuff. He'll analyze it and go further. So I do think we'll see him get better.
I agree.
This is a great opportunity again.
Yeah, nice one. Well done to Mick Schumacher. Also celebrated his birthday the other day. He's only 23.
Yeah, still young. Lots of time.
He's still a kid.
Yeah.
Alfa Romeo also, what a welcome back for the team. Valtteri Bottas, as always, shows us that he's a consummate professional, brilliant in qualifying, but yet again shit off the line. What a mess off the line.
And you can't afford to be that now, starting sort of on the third, fourth row of the grid. Exactly. You need to actually go forward to make races happen. But listen, nonetheless, I think really also proved the point. And I think his overall share price must have gone up because he's been in the shadow of Hamilton all these years. But I think really showed people that he's genuinely a quick driver.
Yeah, I've always rated Valtteri. It was fantastic the way that he came through. I think Gary, honestly, had he had a decent start and was up there with Lewis and George Russell, I genuinely believe that Alfa Romeo at that race last weekend could have challenged the likes of Mercedes.
Which would have been fantastic. But listen, this weekend in Saudi, who knows what can happen? I mean, all the Ferrari engine cars are going well. And this is also about high speed. And so I'd love to see the Alfa Romeo team and Bottas sort of get up there. And his teammate as well. You've got to
Brilliant.
What a drive. I mean, it's just really...
and you have some proper battles.
That's it. And finishing on the podium, in the points, your first Grand Prix. Listen, there's nothing to be sneezed at there.
And he passed Lewis Hamilton on the track. Okay, Lewis was on brand new tires, but he passed Lewis. Now, the thing about it is maybe if you know Chinese, or maybe you're Chinese and you're watching, because I never know how to say the name. I've always watched him in FP2 and they call him Wang Yu Zhou. But apparently his name is actually Zhou Wang Yu.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with Wang Yu Zhou because that's it. But if maybe you can help us. Great performance from him, getting in the points as well. Also, one of the winners, Gary, you got to say, is Alpine.
Yeah.
They were nowhere in free practice 3. Came out in qualifying. Alonso got into the FP3. Great drive from Ocon. I mean, he had a 5-second penalty. I don't know how he got ahead of Alonso. Because Alonso was a little bit ahead of him, but both of them getting into the points. Yeah. And I think very important for a team like that. And also showing that hopefully Renault Alpine has got a decent engine.
Yeah, that's been important. I think they took a lot of flack for that over the last couple of years. But great to see. On the driver front, I've got to be honest with you, I don't think Alonso should be beating Ocon. At 40 years old and what have you. I'm not saying he's not quick, and he isn't. I mean, we know Fernando Alonso, what he's all about. But I think for a young guy, Ocon, this was the year where he needed to start really, I think, being as quick, certainly as Alonso all the time. But that qualifying lap was amazing by Alonso, And the thing as well, you can say for the team, they really were battling in pre-season testing. To develop so quickly and got the car to where it was. It's a good job.
And also, I mean, the crazy thing is, you could have, if you turned on the TV and you're not really a massive Formula One fan, and you saw the pink cars, you might have sat there and gone, "What is Racing Point back?" Because it doesn't look dissimilar.
Yeah.
But they're going to be using the pink color scheme they did in Bahrain. They're going to use it again this weekend in Saudi, and thereafterwards they will go back to their traditional blue and, of course, pink for their BWT sponsor as well. I've got to say, I mentioned Yuki Tsunoda, out of all of the Honda Red Bull team runners or whatever, did manage to get into the points, but there'll be a lot of work that's going on within those teams. Okay, let's have a look at some of the losers. All right, we've said quite a lot about Red Bull. Gary, they would be shaking their heads. They would be furious. They're the world champions with Max Verstappen. They wouldn't have expected these kind of things. But this is racing, new regulations. You don't know what's going to happen. And I think this caught them horribly by surprise with this issue.
Yeah, look, unfortunate. You got to feel for the team as well. I mean, they've done a great job in getting the car ready. But you know what? As we said just now, it's motor racing. These things happen. I think you can get everything right at any one time. That's just how it is. But disappointing nonetheless. But we said 22, 23 races, whatever it's going to be this year. There's a lot that's going to still happen. But just disappointing that they didn't actually just get one car to the finish line. I think it's a tough break for the team. But listen, the team showed last year they're resilient, they're hungry. They will come back, and I think this is just going to spur them on even more. In particular, all the commentary that they received.
There we go. Just putting the camels in because we're going to Saudi. You know what I mean? There we go. And there's lots of camels. There. Okay. More camels because somebody, Colin says, nice camels. There we go. A team, Gary, and I'm sad to say this, I don't see it as being a quick fix. I think it's more than just brake issues that McLaren has. But I mean, to see them languishing after the last couple of seasons that they've had, they really look good in pre-season testing. In Barcelona, even George Russell from Mercedes came out and said the red and the orange cars really look good. Something has gone horribly wrong within the geometry or the setup or the chassis. They've got James Key. And I don't expect this to be rectified until perhaps we get to Barcelona and Europe.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for them to get anything right now. Correct. Yeah. It's just too the gaps are too short. You are away. It's going to be a hard one. But you know, it's unfortunate. We watched them climb and get themselves out of the situation to become a winning team again last year. Yeah, and that victory in Monza. And it's just sad to see them going backwards. And also for a guy like Lando, I mean. I think he's a
5-year contract.
You know, exactly. So, he wants to see this thing work for him as well.
Shame. Yeah, very, very tough weekend for McLaren. And I do anticipate a couple of tough races as well. Williams, Alex Albon, I think did the best that he could do, was great in qualifying. He is the team leader that they need. But Gary, also another Mercedes-powered engine. Let's just bring that up. McLaren, Mercedes-powered engine. Williams, Mercedes-powered engine, and Latifi just had a miserable race. Finished last. The car looks fantastic, but clearly it's either there's porpoising issues or there's a lot more. Another team that I don't see them fixing it, in the relative short term.
No, you're going to have to leave it to Albon to try and qualify into Q2 like he did, and just try and, if he's lucky on the day, bring home a couple of points if he can, or get into the points and just get going whenever you can possibly. But nonetheless, I think Albon did a wonderful job. Remember, Russell, it was hardly ever that Latifi was faster than Russell.
Yes.
And Russell is like the coming man right now. The sort of looks as a replacement to Lewis Hamilton. But Albon did pretty much the same thing to Latifi this weekend. So let's see how that develops. But if it keeps on going in that light, you've got to believe that you understand. Then you understand why Red Bull's kept him on and actually given him the seat in Williams.
No, exactly. Yeah, I mean, great kudos to Alex Albon. Last year and even 2020, Gary, we'd always be sitting and saying Haas, Alfa Romeo, and Williams at the back. All of a sudden, and that were two Ferrari-powered engines. Now you've got McLaren, Williams, Aston Martin, all Mercedes-powered engines. Aston Martin, I mean, loads of problems. All of a sudden, your driver gets COVID. You have to rush in Nico Hulkenberg. what a qualifying performance to out-qualify Stroll. And I think did a terrific race. Most probably just got fatigued.
Yeah.
A very, very hectic race. He's Formula One fit, but not Formula One fit. Most probably like K-Mag even expect, more it to be more severe. But a great performance from them. They finished 12th and 14th, which was net basically most probably a 16th or 14th and 16th,
which is at the back kind of thing.
Which is right at the back. Also, another one that solutions don't seem to be, oh, well, this was just a bad one, we'll sort it out. Yeah. They seem to have huge porpoising issues. And because of that, having to raise the right height,
it just kills the car.
Compromises everything else.
Yeah, exactly. It just kills the car. That's the big issue. When you only got that option left, it's going to be detrimental in other areas. And the error, and specifically, you got to somehow fix the porpoise and get the error to it properly.
Yeah, I'm just trying to check. There's still nothing on Sebastian Vettel. And I mean, this is coming from just an hour ago. He could miss because he's. We haven't had a negative test as yet. It looks like Hulkenberg's going to be there as well. There we go. Those are unfortunately the losers for this weekend. Let's look forward to this weekend Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Gary, was this Grand Prix last year where we had the 5 cars?
Was
that Azerbaijan?
I know which picture you're talking about now. I think it was Azerbaijan. I can't remember. Yeah.
I mean, but we had a crazy race in Saudi Arabia last year. And I don't know if it was this race with the 5 cars. We're back in Jeddah. It's a 7:00 race, South African time. It's going to be a night race. Is it night race?
Yeah,
it's a night race there as well. It's a crazy circuit.
It is
one of the longest on the calendar. Here it is. 3 DRS zones. It's one of those. Qualifying is going to be important, but amazingly for a street circuit, you do have a chance to overtake.
You do have a chance to overtake, but as we saw last year, it was a crazy race. I still kind of don't understand how it's on the calendar, being so fast and so close to the wall. I don't really understand that one.
Very good point. Very good point.
But nonetheless, it's a circuit. Look, when you're driving it, your drivers are going to love it. Yeah. There's no two ways about that. And listen, the racing was okay. I think what dominated last year was the Max Lewis situation, slowing down, letting people
just crazy.
Overtaking the chicanes, that sort of stuff. So maybe it's a little bit clean in that aspect this year.
And also a very good point that you bring up here. And the stewards, just by the way, have spoken to the drivers and the teams and have said, listen, it's up to you as the driver and the team to give back a position if you feel you have gained it unfairly. If you don't make the call, then we're going to jump in. So I think it's quite an interesting concept.
Yes, and jump in with a heavier penalty. Should we need to be called in, we're going to issue a heavier penalty. So nice self-policing tool. This, let's see who works this one out.
Yeah. The one thing, going back to the circuit as well, Saudi Arabia, Gary, one thing that amazed me in Bahrain last week was the abrasiveness and the tires, because I didn't expect so many pit stops. I thought it was great for the racing. This circuit not as abrasive as what Bahrain is, but we got the softer of all of the compounds this weekend. And from what we saw, Gary, this one-stop strategy, which we thought we were going to have this season.
Didn't see it.
It doesn't seem like it's going to be there for the foreseeable future. It seems as though the cars are using the tires a lot more.
Yeah.
And it just makes for interesting strategies.
Yeah. Listen, it was good. It's a dusty circuit. And we thought, the guys are going to race hard on these tires. But again, another new concept that these guys are working with. They've never had it before, and they've got to start understanding just what needs to be done. It'll get a bit easier, I believe, and understand the tires a bit better. But listen, we want to see racing and strategy calls and whatever, and that's what we got. And I don't think it's going to be any different this weekend. I think it's going to be quite something with the tires as well.
Yeah, as well. Stephen Taylor, dark horses for the season. What do you guys think would be the biggest surprise package? I suspect Tsunoda may be a contender. Listen, I think if Honda, Red Bull, whatever they label the engines, can get those issues sorted out, they are going to be up there. I'm still going with Haas, and I think Haas are the dark horses. And Also Alfa Romeo,
Yeah.
Although we've seen with Sauber, Alfa Romeo in the years, they usually start off well and then just like sort of go to sleep and say, oh, we've done our bit. Or they start off terribly and then come good at the end.
I think, look, if the car lasts from AlphaTauri, I think Gassie's definitely got one up on Tsunoda.
Yeah.
That's just my view. But yeah, I agree with you. Haas is the team that you really want to. You're also rooting for it because it's important for them to be able to do it. But they genuinely are in with a shot. That's the thing.
And also, take this with a pinch of salt. Haas don't have many stickers on their cars, so they're lighter as well. Just saying. Some of the teams, Gary, are saying that they're trying to change their liveries so that they lose weight. I mean, they're talking about grams here.
Well, you would, exactly. And I mean, it just shows you, with all the new rules, to get it all right, even at this level, and even after so much time, having spent on these new cars, it's still difficult to get right. Another thing that I've got to say that really amazed me, well, not amazed me this weekend, but I think it took, is the fact that you need to have cars on the racetrack.
Yes.
You've got wind tunnels, and you've got technology,
100%
you've got simulations, you've got anything you want, but you get onto the racetrack and it was a different situation, and I think so. It's nice to see that that's still, at the end of the day, is what it's all about. It's getting it to work on the track in the varying conditions and whatever, irrespective of how much simulation, wind tunnel work, whatever, CFD, whatever it is that you've got to work on these cars.
Get on the track.
Yeah.
It's the only way yeah. Listen, who knows? Haas might have new sponsors this week and maybe a little bit slower. We'll have to say. Okay, finally, last week at the Baron, Gary and I were there. It was so busy that nobody could hear us, unfortunately. But we still had a fabulous time. And we're having a Grand Prix event this coming Sunday at the Baron in Witkoppen. That is in 4 ways. And if you watching from overseas, well, catch a plane. Come and watch it with us. And I've fixed the sound. That is the main thing. But it's also our first F1 Pitbox that we're doing ever that is actually an evening race.
Yeah.
So it's the first time, 7 p.m. So, come for a beer and a burger and come and join us. It's going to be a tremendous amount of fun. Gary, picks for the weekend. You got to say that Ferrari, in my opinion, Ferrari goes in there as a slender favorite.
I think slender favorite. I think we are going to see an Alfa and maybe a Haas really in it there. I'm assuming this, we don't know for sure, but I think the porpoising and the issues that some of the teams had, being in Jeddah is going to be even more difficult because it's not just a straight line anymore. Now you've got these cars going flat out and we, working our way through those walls. I think it'll be a little bit more of a difficult weekend, but listen, we don't know what they've done this week, and maybe there's some magic that's happened between last weekend and this weekend. But I do think it's going to be, got to say Ferrari, Red Bull are going to be the ones to beat.
Yeah, they're going to be right up there. A very, very good question. We spoke quite a bit about Drive to Survive last year. We had 8 years of domination. Last year, of course, was wonderfully brilliant between Red Bull and Mercedes, and it became very controversial at the end. We've been around for quite a while, Gary. We know the cycle of Formula One. One can't quite say right now after one race that the cycle is turning, but all of a sudden, from what we've seen in race one, we can, I think, confidently say that it's not a one-horse race.
No, it's not a one-horse race. And again, just great to see another team in it, and in particular Ferrari. And I'm not just saying it because it's Ferrari. Being competitive in Formula One is good for the Formula One business, and it's imperative. So I'm glad that they are up there, and it just adds another whole dimension to the deal. So look, if the Red Bulls hadn't finished, as we said, Lewis would have been fifth. Whereas
Correct.
In years gone by, you were up there, you were on the podium kind of thing, guaranteed. This one was a lucky one for Hamilton.
Oh, very much so. And just to echo that, it doesn't, whether you're a Ferrari fan or not a Ferrari fan, a strong Ferrari team is massive and very, very important for Formula One. So great to see that. Man, I can't wait. I think tomorrow, it's 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock is first free. I don't even know what the times are. Just check your normal local schedules. But I think it's going to be terrific. I think it's 3 o'clock is the first free practice. Gary, I can't wait. That first double header of the year. Always good to see you. We don't have any backgrounds falling down. Everything sort of worked tonight. Feeling a lot happier. Well done. Yeah. Fritz and Henk, of course, for making sure everything goes smoothly. Thank you very, very much, guys. And We will see you very, very soon. And if you do have a chance, pop into the Baron this coming Sunday for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. From Gary and myself, a very good night. Let's go racing.
They exist in a world beyond ours.